Hare Krishna. Okay. Greetings. Greetings from Govardhan Hill. We just had because of the time difference, usually I give both classes at once. But now, because of the daylight savings time, the class moved up. So this is kind of my second class. It's really nice. Every day I give class at 5. Today, Mamu Thakur, Leela Balasini, and 3 other people came. It was nice. So I was kind of requested to speak a little bit about Śrīla Prabhupāda. I don't know when you celebrate his Tirobhav Titi Mahotsava, his disappearance day. But yeah, I'll say something now. I'll say something tomorrow, maybe not on this. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmalatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, good. Laxmimoni is there. She'll also say something. I'll start this. I guess my first inspiration is Prabhupada and Govardhan. And, you know, I was there in Vrindavan in Śrīla Prabhupāda's last days. It's mercy. It's absolute mercy. Undeserved kindness. I don't know how I ever wound up in Vrindavan, how I'm in Govardhan, how I was there in Prabhupada's last days. But he was very, very ill, and he could only take a little bit of pomegranate juice. And I remember that I was speaking about this before, that as Rabindra Swarup Prabhu said, the problem with the Krishna consciousness movement was Prabhupada was the only adult. It was kind of like, there's a book called Lord of the Flies, where these young students get on an island and they have to make a society, and they're just so immature. So Prabhupada had to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. And, you know, all that he really had was the faith of his disciples. And I was thinking in the last days, he kept on, just 1 second. 1 second. I got a message from Bhakti. Okay. You know, all he really had was the faith of his disciples, and that probably was his greatest quality, was, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, that ability to instill what's in his heart in others. Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Pasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. You're wandering from universe to universe, from species of life to species of life, until by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, one gets the Bhakti Lata Bij. And that was the extent, in one sense, of the qualification of the people he had. It's a very, very dangerous situation. The Krishna consciousness movement was a very dangerous situation, because how Kali Yuga entered through the son of Shamaka Rishi, who cursed Maharaj Pariksit, and that's how Kali Yuga ended. And what happened? That people with power, the young boy had power, but he had no culture. That's how Kali Yuga ends. So Prabhupada had to create this movement where people had power but no culture. How can it possibly go on? How can it possibly go on? It's and just like when Prabhupada said that, he said, my godbrothers criticized me, but there's one thing that I think they were right, that I gave the sannyas to young men. I gave sannyas to young men. And then he quoted a Bengali proverb, but what could I do when there's no trees in the forest? The castor oil tree looks big. It's American. So what could he do? Prabhupada said he was in India and he was approaching all these cultural people, these high-class families. You have 5 sons, give me one son, I'll make them a Brahmin. He said, not one came. He said, but when I came to America, he said, all the young boys and girls already took sannyas. They already left their families. But, what type of qualification was that? So in his last days, he just kept on calling the devotees to come. Actually, some God brothers and God sisters are upset because the temple managers, had some material conception, but Prabhupada had the spiritual conception. And what was his conception? That the only chance for the Krishna consciousness movement to survive, and miraculously it has, was the people's relationship with Prabhupada. And therefore, the most important thing in his last days is that people come and get his sangha, get his glance, get that inspiration. And you can imagine how powerful that influence was, that somehow or other, that movement, it's expanding in different ways, but it's somehow still together. It's still together. We may be in ISKCON, out of ISKCON, but basically for ISKCON. Somehow or other, it's still together. And what is that? It's the amazing thing that Prabhupada was able. And what is that Bhakti Lata Bij? It's somehow or other that conception that to serve God is the highest pleasure, the highest thing, the best thing. So that's really an amazing story and an amazing phenomenon. But here in Govardhan, I wanted to mention another thing, is that in his last days, he was being extremely merciful. And this is related. Because usually to see Prabhupada, you had to go past his secretary, who was Tamal Krishna Maharaj with the initials TKG. It sounded like a very weighty thing anyway, and he was a very strong person. And it was very hard, you couldn't just go in there. But somehow towards the end, Prabhupada did an amazing thing. He opened the doors 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. If you were in Vrindavan, you could walk and sit by Prabhupada's bed. For that same reason that that's the only quality that it's not their learning. It's not their material qualification. Their only qualification was this, their faith in Prabhupada. And I would say one more thing, on a very deeper level, the reason Prabhupada could give that is because he had that. I remember, I think it was Bhakti Vikas Swami told one story, and it impressed me. Prabhupada was in his room in Calcutta, and he had just come back from the West, and he was just meditating. He was sitting in his room, and he was astounded, because if you study the Gaudiya Math, it was a veritable all-star team of personalities. One time I visited OBL Kapoor, who was one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. He was a professor. And, he was telling me, I had so much, I was so impressed with Śrīla Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother. You ever read his books, his ability to conceptualize and express things. But he said he wasn't one of the intellectuals of the Gaudiya Math. I mean, they had Ananta Vasudev. Bhakti Siddhanta could give a lecture and then have to leave. And in his high language, whether it was Bengali or English, Bhakti Siddhanta's words, the article he wrote, what is it? The Vedanta, its morphology and ontology and his language, and he can continue it. And the managers that he had, and I mean, you name these people, Bhakti Dayata Madhav Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta called him the indefatigable incarnation of preaching. He established 64 temples, and they were powerful people that were so incredibly learned. So Prabhupada was meditating, and I went through a list of these people. Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, and these people, they were just such powerful, and they were from the highest class Brahmin families, or the very powerful Kshatriya families, and they were sannyasis, and Prabhupada was outside. He was imagine right now if someone on the periphery who was like a grihasta, somehow or other, he became more than all of ISKCON. It was, I don't know what we would think, how we would handle it. So Prabhupada was not in that abhiman, that self-conception. So he was sitting in his room and he was saying, how was I the lucky one? How was I the lucky one? And he was meditating. And then he said, because I had 100% faith in the order of my spiritual master. And then he, of course, told the story that Bhakti Siddhanta gave him some order. You're an intelligent man. You should preach in the West in the English language. He saw he was a cultured person. And Prabhupada was reading the Gita, and then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think it's 241, he had the verse, Vivisayat Mika Buddhya, Ekeha Kuru Nandana, Bhushakayana, that we should be resolute in devotional service. Bhushakayana, not many branch, we should be resolute. And in the commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that means to take the order of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. And Prabhupada read that, and he gave credit to that. I just vision the task that Prabhupada had. The vision of Prabhupada standing on the shore and getting off the boat and then looking, the whole passion of America in its full glory when it was more than 10 times anything else in the world, facing him and him thinking, what do I have? He had 40 rupees, I think. That's like $8 at the time. And then I always joke, but he had these plastic white shoes, the latest fashion from Loy Bazaar. And here he is, and he has this mission to spread Krishna consciousness in the West. And then he's wondering how he's going to do it. And then he has some faith. And what is the faith? He starts quoting verses from the Bhagavatam. Shrindvata swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hidyantistoya bhadrani vidanoti saritatam nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nitya. How the process works. He had that faith. And because he had that faith, somehow or other, he could give that faith. And, otherwise, how are we all still around? I remember one time I was, living in the Gurukul with Bori John, and, we were getting in middle age, and you shared the bathroom with everyone. And, it was just like ice cold water in the winter. There weren't even private stalls, just a bunch of showers. And I'm brushing my teeth, and he's brushing my teeth, and he has a little gumsha over his shoulders, and I kind of looked at him, and he looked at me. He probably could have been a big professor. I could have been a lawyer or something, Jewish professor, Jewish lawyer. And here we are, we're 40 years old, and we're sharing a bathroom with 40 people with no heat and cold water. And I'm brushing my teeth, and he's brushing his teeth. I joked him. I said, "This is another fine mess you got me into." But why? Why these people made these sacrifices? Because Prabhupada, just his conviction, and he was able to share that conviction. When you have a conviction in your heart, it comes out in your words. Prabhupada said, Chant Hare Krishna. It's profound because he means it and he experienced it. I was thinking of 3 times I saw Prabhupada. I remember Prabhupada chanted a verse, and when he chanted the verse, when Prabhupada chanted the verse, he said it with such conviction. And I remember I was there the 2 times Prabhupada came to Vrindavan to leave the world for the last time. One time he changed his mind and left, but both times he was in that conception. And the first time he came, he was in Rishikesh. And I came to his room. We all came to his room. And in that time, the guest house in Vrindavan was empty. Prabhupada said, advertised by the train station. And now look what it is. So how many people were there? And we came into Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada was sitting on a chair, and he said, now, I've come to leave. He told us, I've come to leave. he said, but if one has to leave, let him come to Vrindavan. He said, I remember it, he said, everything is there. He said, the white sands of Raman Reti, the Jamuna River. And then he said, this is with conviction. He quoted a verse, but he said it with conviction. And I guess it's called realization, where you not only understand something, but you actually see it. That's the difference between realization and understanding. Theoretically, you can understand something, but when you realize it, it's so much deeper because you actually see it. So he said, but what is death? What is death but a change of body? And then he quoted a verse. Then he quoted a verse. Deheno smin yata dehe komaran yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir diras tatir muyate. As the embodied soul passes from boyhood to childhood to youth to old age, the self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. And he said that with conviction. He said that with conviction because he saw that, he realized that, and therefore I was fortunate to be there when he passed from the world. And he passed in full consciousness, that's all, with kirtan. One of the most amazing demonstrations of, because as one person told Satchidananda Swami, he was chanting in Vrindavan, are you chanting the name or the name is chanting you? So at a certain level, you're a vessel for Krishna. And it goes beyond your body and your mind and your ache and your old age. So that scene that Prabhupada's laying on his bed, Pradyumna is reading the Sanskrit and Prabhupada is making commentary. And I would have to say, because this year I taught many times the Brahma Vimohan Leela, and how powerful are those purports. So he had conviction. He actually saw, I'm not the body, I'm spirit soul. You want to be fearless at the time of death, chant, hear, remember Krishna. There was no fear. There was a material kind of drama. But anyway, that first time he came, this is kind of an interesting story, is he was very deep, grave. He wasn't speaking. Even if I had a minute, I once went in his garden. There's two people there. I'm just sitting there. He's not speaking. He's not speaking. He's very grave. And every day they had this rocking chair where they made like handles, and they take him out around the temple, and he would sit in front of Krishna Balaram, and then there would be a kirtan. And the rule was, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj enforced it, that Prabhupada, there was no fat between the skin and the bones because he wasn't eating. So it was very painful, and he couldn't tolerate any noise. So the kartals and Mridanga had to be played very softly. Very, very softly. But somehow or other, Tamal Krishna Maharaj got the idea that if Prabhupada went to the West, then he would, it would give him life. It would give him some kind of, almost the idea that if he wants to stay, he could stay. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj called in. There was one boy, I think he was 10 or 11, and he was a little bit overweight. He was from America. He was a bit of a soft kind of cry type kid. But somehow or other, he happened to be one of the best Mridanga players in all of ISKCON. His name was Markandeya. And he was a phenomenal Mridanga player. I remember when Vishnu John came to Dallas, he was playing the Mridanga. So you can imagine, Tamal Krishna Maharaj called him because he was such an expert Mridanga player. And he called him and he said, I think that, maybe Prabhupada's starting to feel a little bit better. So I'm going to look at Prabhupada. And if I think that I see some energy in him, I'm just going to move my finger and you just make the beat a little bit louder. So we went down there. Tamal Krishna Maharaj looked at Prabhupada and he gave and the Mridanga player just a little bit louder. I don't know what Tamal Krishna Maharaj saw, but maybe he saw Prabhupada some indication. And after a while, he gave the indication it was a little louder. And maybe he saw some more reaction from Prabhupada. And then all of a sudden, I know there's this huge loud kirtan. And you remember something. And I remember there was a god brother who was when he was in high school, he was an American football player. And he played on the line. And opposite from him in Nashville, Tennessee, was B.B. Govindaswamy. They were both linemen in football. His name was Budi Manta. And he was like 6'3", 6'4". And I saw him with the Wampers, and we were stunned. We were stunned because Prabhupada couldn't tolerate anything. And then we get the word that Prabhupada's leaving for the West. On the disappearance day of Śrīla Rupa Goswami, it's at midnight. And I remember we went down at midnight to do kirtan, and Prabhupada came out. And there was no samadhi there because he hadn't passed away, obviously. And they put him lying on the back. They put him lying on the back of the car. And I seem to remember that there was this one Indian man that came whose cousin donated the land that the Gurukul is on. And this person was a famous member of parliament that was in opposition to Indira Gandhi. She had done this emergency, just took autocratic power, and he resisted her. His name was Vishwan Chand Seth. And I think he came and he just said, you guys are crazy. You're killing him. And then Prabhupada goes out. I mean, this is amazing. In that condition. And he makes it to the West and he has to come back and he goes to Mumbai. And then he comes back by train and they pick him up in a Sankirtan vehicle. And it stops by the gate to the ISKCON guest house. And Prabhupada comes in like in the arms of Brahmananda, like Haridas Thakur or the Pieta. And as he gets to his house, Brahmananda stops. Prabhupada folds his hands and looks at us and quotes from King Kulashekar, Krishna Tvadiya Parapankaja Pankarajam Madhyeva Me. Let me die now when the swan of my mind is entangled with the lotus of your feet. Otherwise, at the time of death, when I'm choked up with mucus, bile, and air, how will I remember you. So it was very poignant. The other time, the other verse maybe came a little bit much earlier when Prabhupada was still in bed. And I should mention, Prabhupada had a bedroom, and then they built another floor and a bedroom upstairs. I think maybe in the summer, it's cooler or something during the night, whatever it is. But when he got really sick, he has what's, his living room or darshan room. He moves the bed in there so that people could come in. And I remember I was working from 4:30 in the morning to late at night. I didn't have a minute doing the arti for Krishna Balaram also midday. And I didn't have a minute. And Bibi Govinda Swami said, no, you can go and see Prabhupada. He's opened up the doors. And he said, well, maybe you should just go early. So I went early and chanted my rounds. It was like 2:00. And I was the only one in there besides Baba Ananda. And I mentioned, Prabhupada said, Hare Krishna, Hare, like pain. Baba Ananda asked me to hold his body, and we moved his body in one way. So that was his condition. So, and then Govardhan. And this is a realization I had a little bit when I read the story of Putana. When I read the story of Putana, when I read the story, because when Krishna was killing her, she assumed her real form, which is the witch. Her external form was as a beautiful nurse, but actually that was just an external thing. There was a real her inside, which was a witch, and it came out. So the commentators say a very interesting thing. And of course, externally, I'm not comparing Putana to Prabhupada, but the principle is somehow at death, it's a psychological phenomenon, Prabhupada, a spiritual phenomenon, that you have nothing to hide. Your real self comes out. And I heard, I knew one devotee and never had a relationship with his father. And then his father was dying and he went to see his father. And, some sentiments come out. That's that right now, we got so many defenses and, putting up our guard. The world is, how can we be vulnerable? So many people are ready to exploit us, tear us apart, criticize us. The world creates like these defenses, which is why communities are nice, why festivals are nice, when there's a nice atmosphere, when you're confident in that group, you can let it down. It's so relieving. But therefore, that's the principle. So I was just thinking, at the very end, towards the end, Prabhupada said, let me go to Govardhan. I want to go to Govardhan, which in one sense was a little uncharacteristic, because Prabhupada's not going to reveal his eternal form or like that. Prabhupada was dictated by, Krishna dictated. When Prabhupada said, it was Krishna speaking. It wasn't the ordinary type of calculation. It was really beyond that. It was God speaking through him, dictating to him. We analyze, I do it this way, I do it, but Prabhupada was successful. and Krishna dictated through him. So it's, and if Prabhupada came out, I am a gopi, I am this. I was joking, there's one devotee staying here in my place, in my next room, Mukunda Murari. He preaches in Russia, and I'm quite close with him. And I was joking. I said, 1/4 of Russia is Sahajis. I don't know how many times in Vrindavan, some lady wanted to see me and said, well, I know my guru wouldn't believe me, but I've seen Krishna. And I've so many times. it's just the nature of that kind of culture they have. They're intuitive. I joked with him, I said, half of Russia is Sahajis. I said, if Prabhupada indicated anything, the whole world would be. So Prabhupada didn't only speak for, a few people, he spoke for the world. So he was very careful by Krishna's dictation, what he revealed, what he said, what he indicated, what he stressed. It's almost like one of the proofs for God's existence is that there's so many factors that are put together in a particular way that if any one factor in the universe goes off by a hair, there couldn't be life on Earth. And I think that's like with Prabhupada. There were so many factors and so many things. If he said one thing by a hair wrong, the whole thing falls apart. So he's very measured. But he said, let me go to Govardhan. At the very end, what a strong desire. The Ayurvedic doctor said, this is suicide. Because on those bumpy roads, he wanted to go by bullock cart. He sent Trivikram Swami, Lokanath Swami out. It's by bullock cart. They already went out, and then there was an argument. Some said, you have to follow the order of the spiritual master. Others said, no, we can't let Prabhupada do this. Who is right? Who is wrong? There's rule, and then there's love, and there's like a conflict. Anyway, they said Prabhupada shouldn't go. But very interesting. Then years later, of course, when Prabhupada passed away, they took a deity of Prabhupada, and we circumambulated Govardhan Hill. And then later, Tamal Krishnamurti and Giriraj Swami, trying to fulfill Prabhupada's desire, made this beautiful ISKCON temple in Govardhan. So years later, I was going into the Disappearance Day, and then Prabhupada, Mother Srimati comes. She's a very elevated, saintly lady that lives in Vrindavan, very incredibly deep in Krishna consciousness, uniquely. And she, I said, I saw her, I'm going into the ISKCON place. What are you doing here? And she said, I said, what are you doing here? I said, you're coming from Vrindavan. I said, Prabhupada passed away there. Why are you coming here? She said, Prabhupada passed away there, but he eternally lives here. So that's our mood here in Govardhan. I'm not sure yet what I'll do for the Disappearance Festival. It's not like years when all the senior Vaishnavas were here. I did have the fortune the other day to go to Chanda Sarovara on Diwali, beautiful, where Krishna started the Ras dance in the spring. It's one of the most beautiful lakes, kunds, and it's all lit up. And Sachinanda Swami, Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, and they invited me out there, and I stayed out past my bedtime. But it was something special. So I'm not really sure what will happen. Okay, my god sister Laxmimoni is here. She gave me my first Bhagavad Gita. She was on her way with her ex-husband to get the deities of Radha Shira Gopinath in Toronto at the I guess the harbor of New York. And they had to do it in one day to get back or something. And what happened is I don't know. I never liked to move. I was in my place, and I was impelled to come to the student union. And then when I came, I remember the guy at the desk, Bob Fireman, was a friend, and she was there with Juggy. And he said, "Oh, there's the devotee that I was telling you about." And you may not remember this. And then you said, "Well, I knew there must be a devotee there because Lord Jagannath there was some Lord Jagannath. I didn't even know who Lord Jagannath was." And then at that time, I got the Gita too. So, Laxmimoni, you can speak about Prabhupada in any way. There's such a nice, welcoming group of devotees that are so eager to hear.
I don't know if I can speak.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay, now we do. No, it was me. It was me. I didn't have my sound on. Okay.
I don't know if I can speak. It's a hard time for me, very hard time for me. And I was also there. I wasn't in the room when Prabhupada left, but Nirmal Chandra was there in Prabhupada's quarters in Vrindavan. That's my son, by the way, for those of you who may not know. But I was also there, and I was there when Prabhupada left for London, and ultimately thinking he was going to go to Gitanagari to establish Varnashram, but he didn't make it to Gitanagari. He just came back after being at the manor. And I remember that when Prabhupada actually departed, I was in Delhi, and I was there because we had made an outfit for Govardhan Puja, for Radheshyam, Krishna Balaram, and Gaurnitai, and some money had been sent, and we were informed that if we didn't go to get it, then it would be sent back. So we didn't have a choice. We had to go to Delhi. And by the way, going to Delhi was quite an ordeal. It wasn't as simple as it is now. Anyway, we went to Delhi and came back, and we took a bus. And then when we got to the Vrindavan bus station, I thought Prabhupada must still be with us because everything is going on normally in Vrindavan. Everybody's walking around, and the buses are still running, and the rickshaws are still trying to cheat you. So we got in a rickshaw, and went to the temple, Krishna Balaram temple, and Jagadish, my former husband, was digging Prabhupada's samadhi. And when I came in the front gate, he kind of signaled to me, go in the temple. And when I went in the temple, Śrīla Prabhupāda, his vapu was on the Vyasasana. And then that evening, myself and some other devotees prepared the palanquin that's presently in Prabhupada's room in his house in Vrindavan. We decorated that palanquin, and then the next day Prabhupada was taken on procession. His vapu, his body, was taken on procession. But I hadn't planned on speaking, and I hadn't planned definitely on speaking about Prabhupada's actual departure, or what happened, what didn't happen when Prabhupada was at his final moments and final days in Vrindavan. But my realization over many experiences, many years, is that I know Prabhupada more now than I did when he was with us. Of course, you were a senior male person, I was a relatively senior female person, but the game rules were very different for female people than they were for male people. I'll tell you a story. I was in Mayapur, and the first festival, so to speak, maybe it was a second festival, and they were just building the Lotus building. And there was one room that wasn't complete. The floor wasn't complete. It was all rubble. And all the women were sleeping in that big room. Now it's 3 rooms. Anyway, we were there. And Pishima was there, Prabhupada's sister. And Pishima had an interesting way of doing things. She would wash your hands and wash everything with some Ganga Jal. Wherever she sat, wherever she put her hands, she would wash with Ganga Jal. She always carried around a bottle of Ganga Jal. And whenever she would go into Prabhupada's room, she would take somebody with her. She would never go by herself. So one day she decided that I was going to go with her. And she washed my hand and grabbed my hand and took me to Prabhupada's room. And we were sitting in Prabhupada's room in Mayapur. And actually, I have to say that now that room seems very small, but when I was there then, it seemed huge, and it seemed really crowded also. And Prabhupada was speaking about how in our society, you could always, in Vaishnav society, you could always tell a person's position by how they dress. And so he was speaking about how how you can recognize a sannyasi by the way he dresses, brahmachari, the way he dresses. A woman, he said, with sindoor on her hair means she's a married lady. And then he said, but in our society, everyone dresses simply. We're not interested in impressing people. We just dress simply. And one of my god sisters who was sitting in the corner, she raised her hand and she said, well, Prabhupada, what if your husband buys you beautiful saris? Aren't you allowed to wear them? And Prabhupada said, yes, you can wear them when your husband is there. Otherwise, who are you trying to impress? He said, Krishna is not impressed by beautiful saris. And then he said, the men are supposed to see you as mother. And she made a face. Prabhupada saw her make a face. And so then she said, they call us mother, but they don't treat us like mother. And then Pushta Krishna Maharaj, who was sitting on the other side of Prabhupada, he said, yes, you know that verse, Prabhupada, where Maharaj Kulakshekar says, whenever I think of sex life, I spit on it. He said, I think they think whenever they think of women, they should spit on them. And so then Prabhupada thought, he closed his eyes for a few seconds. And then he said, first, let them become free from sex desire, then let them spit. So just to give you an idea of the difference in, how I was able to relate to Prabhupada, although by Krishna's mercy and nothing else but mercy, I got to cook for Prabhupada very briefly in Delhi in 1974. Prabhupada came we had a building in Anandiketan, and the deities of Radhaparthasarthi, who are now in Delhi, were up in a bedroom, and the darshan, mangalarti, etc., was held out on a veranda that was adjacent to that bedroom. And there was a tiny little servant's kitchen on the side, and I was cooking in there. I never cooked in India before. And it was a kerosene stove, and there was some indication when someone would press a button from a room, then you would see that they wanted something, because it was a servant's kitchen. Prabhupada was right in the room next door, and there was a big window that opened onto that veranda. We used to try to look inside. And one day Prabhupada, I didn't know what I was doing. I was cooking and I had no idea what I was doing. So one day it was Nityananda's appearance day in 1974. And I asked the devotees if Prabhupada should eat breakfast that day because it was a fast day. And I was kind of called stupid. And they said to me, no, stupid, he's not going to eat. It's Nityananda's appearance day. It's a fast day. So I didn't make breakfast. And then the thing came up on the thing, Prabhupada wants. So I went to Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada said, where's my breakfast? I said, well, Prabhupada, it's Nityananda's appearance day. I thought you would be fasting. And Prabhupada said, fruit and milk is also fasting. And then I brought him a cheddar. There's many pictures of Prabhupada in that cheddar. I have some, but I don't have them right here. But I got that cheddar in Delhi. It was very soft, and I had it dyed saffron. And I put a button over here, a button and a buttonhole over here, because I always had trouble keeping cheddars on, and I thought maybe Prabhupada also had trouble keeping cheddars on his head. So I put this button and buttonhole, and when I gave it to Prabhupada, I showed him that there's many pictures of Prabhupada wearing it. He kept it for a long time because there's even pictures of him in France wearing it. But he buttoned it first, and then he slipped it over his head. So it was like a hood. And he asked me at that time, is your husband coming for the GBC meetings? Is he coming for the festival in Mayapur? And I said, yes. And he said, is he bringing your son? Because my children weren't with me. My son wasn't with me. And he said, he should bring your son. So I telegrammed him immediately, and I told him to bring Nirmal. And then Prabhupada at that time, because there was no Krishna Balaram temple, there was nothing really there, and everything was just now coming. And actually, Prabhupada had stopped in that Delhi place because he was on his way to Vrindavan. And so Prabhupada was speaking at Fogal Ashram, which is not the way Fogal Ashram is now. Now it's a big, huge complex, but then it was just small concrete cubicles. And there was a place we put a little cloth thing over. I think there was a Shiva Linga there, if I remember correctly. Prabhupada was speaking there. And there was kirtan, and Nirmal was dancing and playing the mridanga. He was also a very good mridanga player. And Prabhupada, at the end of the kirtan, he instructed that his garland be given to Nirmal. And then he gave this lecture, which is available here and there. I mean, it's recorded. He said he must have had some, he must have had some previous experience in a previous life. Otherwise, how at such a young age, because he was only 4, he said, how could such a young age, how could he be dancing and playing mridanga like this? He said he must have had some experience in a previous life. And then he gave the example of Maharaj Pariksit, who had seen Krishna in the womb of his mother. And so when he came out, he was always asking, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? And then from his very young age, he was worshiping deities of Krishna. And he went on to speak a class. So even though it was a little bit difficult sometimes, I also, in that Delhi temple, Hare Krishna, you know how when you start to speak, you start to remember things that are maybe you're not always thinking about. But Prabhupada didn't have a temple. There was no temple room in that temple. The deities were in a bedroom, I said, and the darshan was out on the veranda. But downstairs, Prabhupada instructed us to make a reading room because we were in a residential area. And we had many Elmiras, these, what's an Elmira, Maharaj? A metal cabinet with some kind of glass.
A metal cabinet.
Behind Maharaj over there, sort of. And that had some of books, Prabhupada's books in there. Yeah, there's an Elmira, except the top was glass. We had many of them, and all around the walls of the room. And Prabhupada instructed us to put books inside. There weren't so many books at that time, but we put books inside. And then, but there was no altar or anything like that. So then when we came, Tamal Krishna Goswami sent us a telegram, and it said, Prabhupada's coming. But he didn't say when. He just said, Prabhupada's coming, get ready. And so I was asked to make a Vyasasana. I didn't know anything about making anything in India. And so they said, don't worry about it. It's really simple. All you have to do is go to Paharganj and find a carpenter, and you tell him what to make. And then you go to the Chandi Chowk and you find cloth, and then you have some cushion maker. He'll make the cushions. You don't have to do anything. So, okay, whatever. I was with one girl. Her name was Bhadrapriya. She left the planet now. And so we went to Paharganj, we ordered something, and we had a design, anyhow, Hare Krishna. And then we went and we got some cloth. It was lavender cloth with white scriggles on it like this. And we ordered a few things, and then we thought it would be done. And a few weeks later, we got a telegram, Prabhupada's coming in 5 days. So we went back to pick everything up, and of course, nothing was done properly. And everything was done something else completely. And what we got instead of a Vyasasana was a table. And that table is still in Krishna Balaram Mandir downstairs below Krishna Balaram. They use it for making anyway, it had little feet. It was supposed to be lion's claws. And we had them put a back on it at the last moment. And there were chairs in that reading room. We had rows and rows of chairs because we were expecting guests. And we got it covered. I was working on a hand crank sewing machine for hours, because the cushions, that was the funniest part. I was used to working in inches, but in India, they were working in centimeters. So the message that I gave them and their creation of what I wanted didn't exactly come out the way that I had hoped it would come out. And so it was like a big, you know what a United States football looks like? It's pointy on the ends and big and wide in the middle. So that's what this cushion looked like. It was big and wide in the middle, and it was pointy at the ends. And we couldn't use it. We had 2 bolsters and an umbrella. They came out okay. And then, so I had to take the stuffing, which was real cotton, natural cotton, out of this thing and reshape it, and sew it together. But it came out, it was really high, and it was also not very packed, so it was kind of like soft. And then Prabhupada came, and I was a nervous wreck. I was my early 20s, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, Prabhupada's gonna sit on this thing, and what's gonna happen? We had to nail the bolsters onto the wood because every time you'd sit down, it would fall off. They would fall off. So Prabhupada came in and he looked at this thing, and there were no stairs to get up. It was only a little high. And so they helped Prabhupada get up, and he sat down. And when he sat down, the cushion it made a noise. It kind of collapsed. It was like a whoopee cushion for anybody on this call who knows what that is. I see Henry does. And Prabhupada looked out at the audience, and he said to Tamal Krishna Goswami, who has made this? And I was sitting there thinking, I'm going to go through the floor now. And then he saw me sitting there, and he said, "Thank you very much." And that's all he said. So, but since Prabhupada's departure, and since serving in ISKCON for over 50 years, pretty much, or trying to render some service. Maybe the best service I did, Maharaj, was giving you a Bhagavad Gita in New Paltz. It was New Paltz, right? It was New Paltz University.
Binghamton.
Huh?
It was Binghamton. It was Binghamton.
Okay. Yeah, Binghamton. Yeah. Because he was in Binghamton, and we were in SUNY University of Buffalo is where I joined, but we were coming from Toronto.
Yeah.
Actually, to pick up the deities of Kircha Gopinath, Radha Kalachandji, and Radha Gopijanabalabha in Detroit. We picked up all three of those sets of deities when we went down to New York, because we got a message from Maita Healy saying the deities were sent weeks ago. Why didn't you get them? Well, why we didn't get them is because she addressed them to ISKCON, period. That's all she put on the letter. So when they came off Air India flight, who's ISKCON? They didn't know where to bring it or anything. So they were in a storehouse, and we called all around when she told us that. And then we found that there were 7 crates addressed to ISKCON sitting in a storeroom in a cargo area in New York. So we drove down to New York, and the 7 crates were 3 sets of deities, Radha and Krishna, each in a crate. And Kalachandji is no small deity either, if you know from Dallas, Radha Kalachandji. And then 1 crate had flutes and staffs and other things in it. And then we met you on the way. So yeah, and I remember that picture of Lord Jagannath. It was in the Student Union building right behind the counter. It was up on the wall, and I said to Jagadish, some devotee is in here because there's Lord Jagannath. Anyway, I find that now over the years, reading the books of various devotees, just experiencing life and Krishna consciousness in this material world, the ups and the downs of it, the ins and the outs of it. I have so much more appreciation and awareness of Śrīla Prabhupada, what he did, how amazing it is what he did. We talk about how he came over on the Jaladuta at 69. Right now I'm 73. And that was amazing, but not nearly as amazing as the fact that he turned hippies into happies. And we weren't always happy, and we were always hippies. I think even today, some of us are still hippies. And Prabhupada breathed life into us, and conviction and determination. I wrote something, just a brief paragraph I'm going to read, and then I'm going to shut up. But I wrote this paragraph just the other day to somebody, if I can read it through my tears. It says, in the last 2 days, oh no, that's the wrong one. Wondering, no, it's up here, sorry. I have to find it first. Well, just let me, okay. I said, also, I have to say that my biggest realization, in quotes, is that once you take even a moment to worship Krishna, or perhaps even more important, a lava matra, a 11th of a second to assist his pure devotee, even in the smallest way, Krishna keeps on your case. He doesn't let up, even when you beg him to do so. He pushes and pushes until you have no choice, or at least none that seems possible, but to just be a humbled servant. Now the task is to be grateful. So that was my thought just a couple of days ago.
Thank you so much, Mother Laxmimoni. Wow. Yeah. That was wonderful. Now, I'm here in Govardhan and I'm doing kind of like Niyama Seva, and the hour moved it a little bit later, and I still have some things to do. But I'm going to try to be in Raganuga Bhakti and be spontaneous for a change. Would anybody else like to just say something, a word or two? You're welcome.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Bhakti Devi. I thank you so much for allowing your god sister to speak to us. It was really moving listening to her. And I just want to say, you know, I've never met Prabhupada, but he's still breathing life into all of us, I have to say. So thank you.
That's a wonderful thought. Thank you, Bhakti Devi. Wow. Anybody else like to just say a word or anything?
Yes, good morning, Maharaj. Thank you for class. It's Isabel. I'm here cutting potatoes at the Bhakti Center. I wanted to say thank you for such a beautiful and inspiring class. And again, like Bhakti Devi said, for allowing your god sister to share these beautiful stories about, you know, Prabhupada. It almost, you know, it feels like he's with us as she was speaking. And I could really feel her love and also her loss for him. You know, I was crying as I was driving here, but wonderful tears. So thank you both so much for sharing these amazing stories.
Thank you so much.
Oh, glory. Hare Krishna.
Good. Anybody else like to say anything? You're welcome to.
You should be lower.
No, you can't hear. Hi, Bo Maharaj.
Who's that?
Radha Charan.
Hey, Radha Charan. Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Mahamara businesses. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I can hear you, yes.
Yes. This morning, like every morning, I read Prabhupada's letters. And I was reading a letter that he wrote to Govinda Dasi in January 1969, where he was thanking her for her feelings of affection for him and how much he was feeling affection for her. And then he pointed to the dedication of the six couples, the three couples he had sent to London and how dedicated they were. So then she was asking him, when will you come to Hawaii? I hope it's not a botheration for you. So Prabhupada replies that it is not botheration for me at all. And then he quotes how the Goswamis gave everything up to go in Vrindavan and live like paupers, and how they produced the Sandarbhas, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and they took so much botheration out of compassion for suffering humanity. He said the same thing about Lord Chaitanya, who took sannyas as a young man, even though he was a learned scholar and he had a beautiful wife. And then he mentions that he is also following in these footsteps, and therefore it is not botheration for him at all to dedicate his life to spread Krishna consciousness. So when I read this, I felt that it is not botheration at all for any of us to give our lives to Śrīla Prabhupāda without any reservation, no holding back, and just give everything to him for everything that he has done for us.
Radhatran, that's so potent. Thank you so much. Just another side note, I'll probably go in December to Mayapur. I don't know if I should say I hope you're still there, because I know you're waiting to get to your preaching field, but I hope
we'll be there.
Okay, then I'd love to see you and Krishna Premi. I'm planning on going to in December rather than later this year.
Yes. Okay.
So let's see how that works out.
We'll be
Okay.
there.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody just want to say hello to everyone?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Tumta Gopinath here.
And Kishore Radha.
Haribo. I'm going to have a Govardhan retreat. I'll be sending it out soon. I'll tell everybody here. And I will give a family discount.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Guru Maharaj, thank you so much for the nice memories. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. This is Narmasaki.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Good. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Gail here.
Gail, any thought?
Yes, I would just like to actually thank you for making Śrīla Prabhupāda so accessible.
Wow. Thank you so much. Good. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thanks for a beautiful class. Yeah, and thank you very much for nice memories shared with us.
Okay. Remember, hopefully try to keep that last couple of days in January. We'll send it out soon. Hopefully you can both join us. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Haribol.
So happy to see you so blissful in Govardhan.
I am.
I can say that.
Where's Ram Sadowski?
He's right here.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody else?
Haribol Gurudev, my obeisances.
Hey, it's okay.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Karuna.
I'd like to pay my obeisances to Laxmimoni too.
Me too.
Beautiful stories, advanced soul.
Lovely class. Everything.
Just a side thing. I had a very nice, deep talk with your daughter, answering her questions on Bhagavad Gita.
Yep.
Oh, good.
This morning, the morning here.
I told her to put a New Delhi clock on her iPhone.
Oh yeah, it got a little screwed up the time. I know she was in transcendental anxiety.
Yes, complete transcendental anxiety.
Okay, but okay. Anybody else? Say hello.
Hey, Krishna Maharaj.
When is Prabhupada's Disappearance Day there?
Today.
It was today.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
Perfect.
What's that?
This is perfect. It's perfect timing.
Okay, great. So I get to celebrate it twice. Okay, good.
Cool.
I'm going to have that retreat. I don't know which one of you is.
You'll see.
Don't get so confident, I'll go Vinda.
The world breaks me down at every moment. So.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for very beautiful class. Thank you so much.
Nice. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Who is that? Hello?
Kadambamala.
Who? Kadamba.
Kadambamala.
Yeah, no, I know you. I love you. Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Malati Devi Dasi.
Malati, Haribo. Good.
Beautiful. Thank you. It was really beautiful hearing more stories about Prabhupada, and it does keep it all fresh and alive. Thank you.
Very important day. So, okay. I'm going to go now because I still have my Damodar Astakam and it's already quite late. Okay. Hey, Don Kaylee, Haribo.
Thank you for class.
Okay.
I'm headed to the Hartford Temple. We're celebrating Govardhan Puja today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it's Prabhupada's Disappearance Festival.
Well, it is, but they're just observing Govardhan Puja today.
I guess it's Raganuga Bhakti in Hartford. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Vanchakalpa Trubhyas Jaka Pasindu Bevicha Pati.